Hello, everyone. The BritCon English Nationals is going on, and I am not there. I am pretty bummed out about that. So I'm following the results today, and I'm trying to guess who will win what matches based on my knowledge of the players and the lists. So far, my predictions have sort of held. Um, so, so that's what I'm doing today. I'm also hiding my eyes, not only because of the sun, but I have an eye infection, looking horrible. I'm all red-eyed, so I can't actually go anywhere because, yeah, homesick. But I have done a bit of work today and in between games because they're not streaming. Why are you not streaming? Oh, come on. Anyways, in between games, I've done a bit of more work on my series of rookie tutorials, and this one is a tutorial for beginning players who want to start out running competitive Japanese. Let's go and watch what I've done. So here we go. Right, so it is for beginning players, it is for rookies, but it is for rookies who want to compete, who want to be competitive players. Um, if you want to have advice on how to run thematic or historical lists, this is not the channel. My disclaimers. As always, as I said, competitiveness, that's what I talk about. Um, my own expertise with Japanese is limited. I have been told that they should be the next army I start out, but I have played against quite a lot of Japanese players, and we have run Japanese lists in the Danish national team. Oh, terribly sorry about that. So I know my way around the Japanese. Um, so if you want to run them competitively, I have also studied this both with the actual numbers that we have. Me and Russell have been going over numbers for the WTC. I also have looked very intensely at the other international tournaments, the previous WTC and the Danish national, and what I can get of the UK tournaments. So I know sort of what it is that works for the Japanese. So that is my disclaimers. Now, as per usual, I'm going to talk you through the competitive advantages, disadvantages, the standout units, and the army builds. So the competitive advantages for Japanese is that they have very, very strong national special rules, especially in high point games. Their main standout rule is the fanatic rule on all infantry, because that means that your infantry is almost immune to flamethrowers. Um, it also means that you, per infantry model, get 3 points free. So if you're running 1,000-point games, you're actually, if you were to buy that army list in another nation, you're running 1,300 points, not 1,000. And it gets worse the more infantry you bring and the higher the points level. So, and that really encourages certain builds for Japanese. When we get to talking about army builds, I'll also say that they are sort of a mono build army. Um, their strength lies in the fanatic horde of infantry. Especially so because they also get the Banzai rule, which means that you can always move that forward towards the enemy. Really strong combination of two special rules. I also think that their howitzers are kind of good, and especially maybe if you're limited to a single platoon in whatever event you're going to, because the Japanese can bring like the normal gun, but they can also bring a really good, really cheap howitzer tank-ish, the Horo. So typically you'll see a lot of indirect shots in Japanese lists. That is pretty good. And then their AT choices are very strong, although very hard to use. So, and that is, of course, the suicide bombers. I'll get back to those. Disadvantages. They are pretty limited, the Japanese, in their choices of armored vehicles and in their choices of transport, and especially maybe in their choices of stuff that is good when you put it in a transport. They don't have a lot of SMGs. They don't have a lot of flamethrowers. So the things that you would normally transport in a transport are not really there in Japanese lists, which means that typically you won't see many transports at all in Japanese lists, and they have a pretty limited roster as well. Their armor is, quite frankly, most of the time crap. Japanese tanks are very lightly armored, and they are not over machine gunned like the Stuart, although they can in some theaters have access to captured Stuart. If you can do that, do it, because they're really good. But you don't have a medium tank that's 9+ that have a howitzer. You don't have 8+ tanks with a lot of machine guns most of the time. What you do have is 7+ tanks and 8+ tanks that are vulnerable or weak or something. It doesn't really work. They're also pretty limited in their skirmish capacity, mostly because their special rules don't really benefit skirmishing. So what other armies can do well, especially the Americans, of course, that flow and ebb where you move a little bit forward, shoot, you move a little bit back and shoot. Japanese don't do this. They are really not very good skirmishers. They rush at the enemy, they kill them in close combat, or they shoot them down dead before they get there. But they don't skirmish all that much. So the ability to put out pins is very limited. And they are sort of a monobuild because of these limitations and advantages. What you will typically see is the same build every single time in varying degrees. And I'll get back to those builds in a minute. So we have here the spread, and it's a pretty good spread for Japanese. You can build a mixed bag army, you can build a gun line, you can build the Horde armies, you can build Death Star armies with large units of veterans. You can build forward deployers using native irregulars. Japanese as well as British get access to the native irregulars. You can, in some theaters, you can build quite strong cavalry lists because the Japanese cavalry also get fanatic. So you have fanatic tough fighter. That combination is really good, especially on cavalry because it also has reach. And you can build assault lists, although I don't see them very much. And you can do MSU, multiple small units, very small units that are just there for the order dice. Although you don't typically see most of these builds for Japanese lists. Typically, there are 2 elements that you see in Japanese lists, and they can sort of be either all one element or all of the other element, but most often you'll see them combined, and it's the combination of those 2 elements that have been the most successful in international tournaments. And that is a combination of the gun line and the Horde. Those 2, and you can see Japanese builds that are all Horde, that have only infantry, and basically only one type of unit of infantry. And you can see gunline armies where the infantry is not really there, not really strong, but you're just maxing out on horos and howitzers and mortars, right? But typically a combination of those 2 works well. I will give an honorable mention to a specific type of unit that you can do with the Japanese. You can also do them with, let's see, who else has this? The Belgians do, maybe the French as well, and that is the Grenadier unit. With the Japanese, you could build a very specific build that's not really covered in my army builds, because we don't see it quite a lot. It's sort of a Death Star. You're spending a lot of points on one unit of infantry, and that unit of infantry, for that you buy 3 light mortars. It's the Grenadiers, the Japanese Grenadiers. They can have 3 light mortars in a unit, and that unit can be regular, but it can also be a large unit of veterans. What that will mean is that that one unit has 3 dice with which you can roll a 6 each turn. And that is going to crop up. It really is. And 3 light mortars shooting at one enemy unit is really, really dangerous for that one enemy unit. So it's really good at taking out like specific units of dangerous troops, because they will hit with those light mortars and they will start giving a lot of pins and making casualties. So that is an honorable mention that is not really covered in my usual army builds here. Right, stand out units is the Bamboo Spear Warriors. The Bamboo Spear Warriors is in many respects, it's the best unit of the game, because they're so crap. They can't really do anything. They have a spear made out of a large round bamboo stick that has been sharpened. It's not really good. In real life, they were crap. I think they had 1 charge, maybe. They weren't really used either. But in the game of bull dashing, you see them all the time, especially in large units and like large amounts of them in the Japanese horde lists. Why? Because they're so damn cheap and they are fanatic. So once you hit the enemy, once you charge them, you're fighting with your very, very inexpensive, fanatic, inexperienced dudes, and you'll just keep on hurting them. Each turn, some of them will kill some of the enemy. It doesn't matter if all your units die. They cost basically nothing. They are so cheap. You can afford. I've seen lists where you have 100 plus bamboo spearmen in the list. That is insane. That Japanese player can just throw units at you one at a time and try to kill you, and he will succeed at some point. The militia is sort of the same. It's also a standout unit, but that has the added ability that it's a little bit more expensive, but it can shoot because they do have rifles. Then the Grenadiers, I talked about those. I think there is something that most people overlook with Japanese lists, and it is their veterans. Veteran fanatics are really strong. Most people disregard them in favor of the inexperienced militia and bamboos, and I can completely understand that, because they are some of the best units of the game, points for value-wise. But the veteran fanatics are really good. The only thing I would really want for them to become even better is if you could get more SMGs. If somehow you could get Tough Fighter on your veteran fanatics, that would be amazing. But you can't most of the time. So instead, we have the Grenadier unit with the light mortars I talked about before. We have the Horo, which I think should be in most Japanese gun army lists, gun line lists. We have the Suicide Anti-Tank Team, which is a really strong anti-tank choice, but it is very difficult to actually connect to the tank. And that's because when you are running at a tank, you're actually charging that tank. If the tank hasn't done anything yet, then that tank can make defensive fire, and you're just one guy, so you die. So you're going to have to use them very, very cleverly, and the enemy is going to have to make mistakes. Otherwise, what you do with them is you push the enemy armor into a corner where they can't actually hurt the rest of your troops. So most of the time, suicide anti-tankers will not actually try to do the suicide charge. Why should they? They're worth way more as a threat. And then finally, the Kempeitai. It is a police unit that makes your bamboo and militiamen more likely to pass their green test and become regular, which is brilliant. Lovely. we love the Kempertai. It's a really good unit, and I think you should always take one. It's a cheap order dice, and it helps the rest of your horde. So those were the standout units that I think you should go and look at, and those were the army builds that we see the most when we are running competitive Japanese. I would very much like it if someone could win a tournament using veteran Japanese instead of all inexperienced horde. Maybe as veteran assaulters or maybe as the grenadiers. That would be awesome. If anyone ever does so, please let me know. I want to know about it. So that was more or less it for today. I hope you're enjoying the summer weather, and let me get some results from BrickCon soon, please. I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. Right. Cheers, everyone. Bye.